Yes, I'll be quick. I wanted to, we were doing a hearing, Senator Blunt and myself, over in rules on oversight of the libraries, which went quite well. But this is a really important hearing, and I wish I could be there in person. And it couldn't be happening on a more important day in terms of us attempting to move forward and pledging to continue to move forward on voting legislation. I want to thank you, Chair Blumenthal, for holding the hearing. And I also want to thank Ben Ray Lujan for his leadership. And I am the chair of the Rules Committee, and we want to pass all these bills. And I want to make sure to participate today and express my strong support for the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the inclusion of the Native American Voting Rights Act, which, as I mentioned, Senator Lujan is leading. Provisions from the Native American Voting Rights Act are also included in the Freedom to Vote Act, which is my bill with Senator Manchin and many others, which came out of the work that we did on the Rules Committee. So all of that process aside, what is this really about? And your witnesses know it well. This is about the salvation of our democracy, and we should not stop fighting until we protect the sacred right to vote. My state of Minnesota has a large and diverse tribal population, and I know that Native American communities in particular face unique challenges all over the country when it comes to registering to vote, casting their ballot, and ultimately having their ballot counted. In the lead up to the election last year, tribal leaders across the country expressed concern that their communities were being left behind in the face of significant obstacles to their voting. Some Native American voters had to drive up to 280 miles one way just to cast their ballot, just to exercise their constitutional right to vote. Others saw widespread closures of polling locations on tribal lands, and many experienced issues receiving their mail-in ballots because Native American homes on tribal lands often do not have, I'm sure you've discussed this, traditional residential mailing addresses. Since the election, almost 400 bills have been introduced across the country in every state. Over 30 of them have been signed into law in 19 states, including states that are home to many tribes like Montana, Arizona, and Oklahoma. These bills aren't just empty threats or some kind of a bullet point on a political brochure. They are real efforts to stop people from voting, and many could make it difficult, even more difficult, for Native Americans to exercise their right to vote. The Native American Voting Rights Act will help address many of the challenges tribal communities face in accessing the ballot with its basic safeguards so that election officials accept tribal ID for voter ID purposes. One early voting ballot drop box and polling location per precinct. What a difference that would make on tribal lands. And making sure that states provide mail-in voting materials in applicable native languages as well as in English. These protections will make a big difference in tribal communities across the country. As Congressman Lewis once said, your vote is precious, almost sacred. It is the most powerful, nonviolent tool we have to create a more perfect union. So let's do this. Let's create a more perfect union. And we know that to do that, our democracy must work for all citizens who can participate. This hearing is an important step forward in making that happen. Thank you very much, Chairman Blumenthal.